Welcome to the real first episode of Tech Shift F9, or TSF9, a weekly podcast dedicated to helping people reinvent their career in the age of technology. I'm your host, Maurizio Rafone. I'm a former banker with 20 plus years of experience in capital markets, structured finance, and derivatives, who a few years ago felt the need to embrace the rapid changes happening in the world of business and began a career journey into tech. I'm currently the Chief Financial Officer for a tech company based in Asia, and I bring you this podcast to draw upon the experience of several amazing guests who've gone through their own career transition and transformation, in all cases strongly shaped by the advent of new, exciting, but sometimes scary technologies. I have no plans to become the next Joe Rogan, but I'm very keen to make this podcast a resourceful source of support, advice, and ideas to all those looking at a new career but of managing their existing career, particularly when dealing with new technologies. I'm incredibly honored to have as first guest on TSF9, joining us from Tokyo, Kathleen Chu. Kathleen is Marketing Communications Lead at Avail, a cutting-edge modular blockchain built to scale future blockchains. Kathleen spent most of her career in journalism, namely as a reporter with Bloomberg, reporting on investments and real estate markets. Kathleen then embraced the world of technology and became a communications and marketing lead at several leading blockchain companies, including Polygon and Maker Foundation. Kathleen, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here and to have known you from the beginning of your career journey into technology.
Thank you. It's good to be on your show. It's an honor to be on your show.
You're too kind. So, Kathleen, you are a prime example of someone who's decided to make a jump into a technology career coming from a very different background, right? And so the first question I have to ask you is why and what drove you to this change?
I guess I like taking on new challenges, and I have always wanted to change my career when I was at Bloomberg. I joined Bloomberg in 1999 and left in 2017, so that's a long time. During which I kind of moved. I had took on different roles, from multimedia producer to news assistant to reporter, covering different beats, ranging from real estate to hedge funds. That's even so. It's still kind of I still felt like there must be more than this. Having said that, I really enjoy being a reporter, and because you get the chance to chat with many fascinating people, successful people, and learn from them. But at the same time, I feel like something's missing in my life, and so there was a lot of back and forth in my head that I've always wanted to make a change. And also, living in Japan has been kind of challenging. I have small kids, and Bloomberg was able to kind of gave me a place where I can kind of juggle, I can balance my career and family well, looking after the kids and leaving work, being able to leave work early. That was really a plus. And what really drove me, I've been wanting to make a jump for longest time. I remember working kind of walking around Mardoch area during lunch break. I've always kind of like thinking how I can make that switch, and I've tried different things and failed I've tried the different interviews, and also I even asked Bloomberg to assign me to a tech beat, and I was told that my Japanese wasn't good enough. So yeah, so that was so that continued on for a while, and then in 2017, I happened to be speaking to a friend and who knows someone who was hiring for a blockchain startup. And I didn't really know much. And once I started searching, I just couldn't really, just kind of like what everyone else says in the sector. Kind of once you start, you just kind of start like digging, and it's just a rabbit hole. You just find new things, new information to learn. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got into the blockchain space. I think it's just a desire for that change that was within me for the longest time. It has been so long I wanted to make that change.
I
And I'm
remember
finally, able
I
to do
saw
that.
you
Yeah,
make that change, which was it's inspiring. And
thank you.
you're also a great example of someone who's gone from a fairly traditional industry like journalism has been around forever into something completely cutting edge, particularly a few years ago when you joined with all these new technologies coming up. And so I think that makes the point that you don't need to be a tech head to
Mm.
work in tech. However, in terms of your experience in dealing in with people in this new industry that tend to be tech heads a little bit, did you have to learn a sort of I say a new language or perhaps a new way of communicating?
Yeah, well, yeah, there, I want to answer to your question, but first, like you definitely do not have to be like a tech person to be in the tech space. That's for sure, because I didn't realize this. There's just so much there's a strong demand for people who are able to transfer their skills, kind of transform them into something that's useful. You don't know that within yourself. I didn't know that I had that in me. A lot of things I learned from Bloomberg, I was able to easily kind of transfer that to apply to something else. So definitely you don't have to know the tech to be in the tech space. There is a very strong demand. So your question is that whether I needed to learn new language to speak with my colleagues. I do in a sense, but I think rather a new language is more you start from kind of different set of tools. Say, for example, Google search, you search for stuff and you know that nothing is, you just that belief that you can learn everything on your own is also important. And Google search provides, it's such a great tool. You can just learn pretty much everything. So, with the journalism background, I didn't know anything about build kind of strategy, building, planning, execution, and I didn't even know how to set up a marketing strategy. So I actually had to start searching. How do you do that? And what's the SWOT analysis? And how do you make a SWOT? How do you create a SWOT analysis? And how do you create a budget? And so all that, right? So, but then now the company I work for is very technical. So I do have to also learn a lot. The previous company also actually, yeah, the past three companies have been very technical, very technical companies. So I had to learn a lot. And yeah, well, I learned that by listening to podcasts and also learn from watching YouTube, mostly podcasts. There are plenty of materials out there that you can learn. And you mentioned ChatGPT earlier. I also find ChatGPT very useful. You can just learn so much from ChatGPT also. Maybe it's not entirely accurate, but it's certainly a tool that you want to be able to utilize into your benefit, right? The sooner you learn that, it's kind of like like maybe 5-10 years ago, the sooner like Google search is your friend.
Oh, absolutely. And just for the listeners, our conversation on ChatGPT was off the record before we started recording. But actually, Kathleen, you make an extremely interesting point about the fact that you not only had to learn some details about the industry you were entering in terms of some of the technical aspects, some of the governance aspects, and so forth, but you also went on a personal journey of learning about doing business. And so that's like a double challenge that you had to face, and handling the kids and day-to-day life. So hats off to you. And I wonder, there must have been times where you felt perhaps overwhelmed, and like we all do, I think, at times. Were there any tips or things that you did that you felt really helped you in overcoming the challenges that you faced, particularly, as I said, having to juggle new industry, new jargon, new ways of doing things, and self-improvement?
Yeah, I learned to meditate. Meditation helps a lot. That really helped. It really helped me to handle kind of all the stress for coming from working in a startup, and it's very flexible. Actually, the startup world. Especially the companies I've worked for, your time is very flexible, but there's just a lot that you need to think about, and you want to be strategic on what you do not do, because there's just so much stuff that you can do, but you really need to decide what not to do. So I really need that time and space to think. So that's whenever I'm very stressed, I meditate.
That's wonderful advice. Kathleen, one thing that really I'm curious about is you went from an environment in journalism where it's all about people and pressing the flesh, and the bullpens and newsroom and all that, to the world of blockchain where people tend to work remotely and all over the globe. From a professional perspective, how did you handle this requirement to, I suppose, communicate even better because of the lack of physical contact, perhaps?
It's the world today. It's so well, at least in the sector I am in, many people work remotely. I remember at Polygon we even had a head of remote, which is very, it just goes to show how important that is to be able to communicate well. uh, so what we so what I learned to do is to have regular calls with team colleagues, and offsite, so-called offsite, which is where you gather with your team members in a CT. That on a regular basis is also very important in terms of team building and communications. Also, and you we often kind of don't realize now we have the technology that we can easily communicate. So online meeting, not just online meeting, or communicate in a group on, say, for example, on Slack channels or Discord. You can actually record what you want to say easily and just share it, and then go back and forth. And you can even send record meetings, and there are just so many ways to improve communications. Most late Recently, I started using an AI kind of transcription kind of tools for my meetings, but it depends on the other person whether they feel comfortable having another service listening in. And then by the end of the meeting, this company will actually just send you all everything you discuss, and summarize the meeting for you. So
Sounds like Big Brother a little bit.
it does. Actually, we had an internal meeting yesterday, and no one felt comfortable with that. So yeah, probably I need to figure out another way.
No, that makes sense. And I mean, you're clearly a very minded person, someone who's taking a step into the unknown a little bit, moving into such a different industry that also is moving at a very fast pace. I mean, blockchain in 2017 was very different what it is today. And before making that jump, how did you go about educating yourself in the space you're about to enter? And I remember, you mentioned the podcasts, but has there been any particular approach to this industry that you thought was essential for your current success?
Podcast, number one, and then two is attending conferences and learning from others. This can take in two forms. One is in-person conferences. Um, for example, I've been to DEF CON 3 times now. DEF CON is developer conference, and that's the biggest one, organized by Ethereum, which is the most well-known blockchain, and second longest chain in the world of blockchain. Um, that's where you can learn a lot. There are many sessions you can attend. Although it's for developers, there's just so much information that you can absorb, and that's in person. And many people, perhaps I didn't know this, but you can actually go online and search for conferences that you can actually listening. You don't even need to travel. There's so much information out there on YouTube. So I learned a lot from that too. Three, I've been lucky enough to have colleagues who show me the steps and the companies that I have joined. I've gone through, say, for example, at Maker Foundation, my colleague would spend an hour with me every week to just let me ask any questions that I have, and he'll explain. And that was, I feel really incredibly grateful for his time. And that was just such an important learning experience. And also at Polygon, I got to learn different things. It was more on the business side. And now I'm with Avail. Avail is, there's the learning curve is so much deeper because it's very technical. So it's a infrastructure, blockchain infrastructure company. So it's very, very technical, and still, approaching it with an attitude of like, there's you can always learn new things. There's nothing that's too hard that you cannot learn. If it's too hard, you just ask ChatGPT, like, summarize it for me. Explain it like I'm 5.
Thank you. And Kathleen, one thing I have a feeling that sometimes is underlooked is the fact that, or overlooked, that a lot of people looking at career transitions and moving into a new sector are doing it out of fear, out of concern, perhaps. And I really would like to change the narrative about it, because it's not a helpful way or a healthy way of approaching life in general, and particularly one's career. So I really like the example that's coming from you of having embraced this challenge, and now you're getting into even more technical areas, and you're unfazed by that. So that's very inspiring to me. So thank you for that. But I do have a question specific to that, which is, as you're getting deeper and deeper in the blockchain industry, do you find that the people that you deal with, and I'm not talking necessarily just about your colleagues, I'm sure your colleagues are wonderful, but the ones around in the industry, are they, how are they looking at people like us, people a little bit older that have, different experience, valuable, but not necessarily, in the same area? Have you found it a friendly industry? Was your expectation different than the actual reality?
I'm not sure how people think. I'm not sure, but based on my experience, well, I guess I look at it as that I have something to offer. I have my knowledge to offer, and I also really keen to learn from their perspective. So I'm not sure how they think about like people that are outside of tech space. But I do feel like there's a sense of just things move very fast. And there's a saying that in the crypto or slash blockchain space, 1 year in the real life, it's like 7 years in the blockchain space. So it does feel like that. And maybe some people may feel like when I first started, maybe some people may think that I might have thought that I was slow. I don't know. They didn't tell me, but it did feel like things move very fast, and just I needed to like accelerate or do things fast and be very effective in order to do my job well, and be very agile to change direction fast, because in this this is a very innovative sector, and something's strategy that you set 2 months ago may change. So some companies don't plan too much ahead, which I disagree. But well, so for long term, for some companies in startup, it's 6 months, because the new technology and direction changes all the time. You kind of have to look at the sector. If you just kind of heads down building, that's not gonna help, right? So you just have to be able to kind of move fast. So I guess I kind of adjust myself to that, and that helped.
Oh, totally. That makes sense. And as you did that, I mean, you must have felt that the changing environment in the industry is actually providing opportunities much more so than in perhaps the more traditional industry you were in
Yes.
from before. And so I guess there's a positive side to that. Even there may be some stress given the pace. However, it is something that is empowering. Do you feel that that has been the case?
Yes, yes, it has. It's definitely very empowering. I could have never thought that I would be able to work in an international company based in Japan. Like I am based in Tokyo, and it always felt like pretty limiting, in my years here, living here. Um, but now I've taken on kind of a global kind of role, um, and that was kind of impossible to imagine before.
That's wonderful. And I mean, I've heard a lot of positives, but I do want to ask a bit of a cheeky question, if you don't mind. And so, if you could go back in time a few years, maybe just before you're jumping to the world of blockchain, what would you tell your younger self? And what sort of advice would you have?
Okay, if I get to talk to myself back in 2017, I would tell her to buy Bitcoin.
Of course.
um, but seriously, I probably would tell her to just go for it. Yeah, there's just so much. It's really a lot of fun working in the startup space. Well, yeah, I guess some of the companies wouldn't count for startup, but you would think that they wouldn't count. But like Polygon is pretty big. Although when I joined we had about 100 people, and now, well, Polygon when I left, they were about 500. So within the year, it kind of grew grew really fast.
Amazing.
So yeah.
And was there a moment where you thought, "What am I doing?" Where you had that feeling where you were a little bit unsure about the jump that you just made, um, and how did you get over that? And I ask you that because that's something I often, well, not often, but sometimes I ask myself. It's like maybe, what if I'd stuck around with my banking career? What if I'd stayed in a different kind of environment? And then it quickly goes away. But um, did you ever go through something like that?
Yeah, most recently, I went through that era many times. My mind just like, what am I doing? And why every time I feel frustrated. But most recently, I went to so I went for to attend an offsite, and in the past I would have flown business class, right? But and even at Polygon I was able to kind of fly business class, but the new startup is short on budget, so we all flew economy. And at the point, like I will be thinking like all my former colleagues, they're kind of like always showing like really comfortable seats, and what am I doing?
Right.
why, why did I choose this? But then I remind myself again how much fun I'm having in the space. Like, who cares about the seat? I don't really mind. Then yeah, that's actually, yeah, I actually don't mind. It's less comfortable. Yeah, business class is just great, but I love my job, so I think that's important. That's more important.
Absolutely. That's great to hear, Kathleen. Kathleen, this brings us to a close for this week's episode. I would love to have you back at some point, actually, because you're a great guest. But in the meantime, I thank you very much. And for people that want to find out more about you, about your company, perhaps, where can they do that?
So I'm at, you can follow me. I'm on Twitter at Inquisitive Cass. That's my my Twitter handle that I set up at Bloomberg. So it's, yeah. And I'm now with availproject.org. It's a modular blockchain company. Yeah, in case anyone's interested in learning about it, feel free to take a look.
Great. Thanks again, Kathleen.
Thank you, Mauricio.
It's been an absolute pleasure having Kathleen on the TechShift F9 podcast. I would like to thank you all for listening. Stay cool, stay positive.